need all flight crews to report to their designated areas immediately.
Hey, Adam Baldwin, can I borrow that?
Sir.
Good evening. Good evening. In less than a minute, the title sequence will start, and we'll be reviewing the most popular alien invasion movies in the history of cinema. Cinema, that word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our taste in silly blockbusters anymore. We will be united in our common interests. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July, and you'll once again be watching a Roland Emmerich film. Not for entertainment, boredom, or genuine interest, but because you have to, because your friends saw it too and you want to talk about it. But should this film suck, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but as the day that filmgoers declared in one voice, we will not tolerate shitty sequels. We will not vanish without a snide tweet. We're going to complain. We're going to criticize. Today, we review both Independence Days. And this is Movie Night. Hello and welcome to Movie Night. I'm your host, Jonathan Paula. Tonight we kick off a month of space-based movies with a look at alien invasion films. Let's start with The Day the Earth Stood Still. A true pillar of the sci-fi genre, this intriguing black and white science fiction film from director Robert Wise was released on September 18, 1951, and doubled its $995,000 budget. Based on the 1940 short story Farewell to the Master by Harry Bates, a humanoid alien visitor named Klaatu, accompanied by a powerful 8-foot robot, attempts to deliver an important message that will affect the entire human race. The Martian man commands his metallic robot bodyguard with the memorable phrase, Klaatu Barada Nikto, a line so indelible to the sci-fi genre I had it printed on one of my t-shirts, which you can buy at thatreference.com. The 92-minute narrative wastes no time getting started, as a flying saucer lands on the White House Oval within the first 3 minutes of the film. When first contact goes wrong, Klaatu, portrayed in an understated turn by Michael Rene, flees captivity to explore humanity for himself, in secret. A majority of the movie sees Rene touring the Capitol and interacting with unsuspecting humans, as he endeavors to familiarize himself with our violent and primitive race. Patricia Neal, Billy Gray, and Hugh Marlowe are featured in supporting roles. Remarking on humanity's ignorance, Rene confesses, "I'm impatient with stupidity. My people have learned to live without it." Unwilling to deal with the stupid commoners of Earth, he pulls a Goodwill Hunting move by secretly solving an impossible math equation just to gain audience with one of Earth's greatest scientists. Although not as exciting as the film's more memorable moments, these smaller scenes are the real meat of the film. And like most fiction of this genre, the dialogue and development serve as a commentary on real-world issues, in this case post-war suspicions over the rise of nuclear armament. I first saw this picture as a kid, and the scene that stayed with me the most was undoubtedly the titular sequence, when Klaatu freezes all mechanical objects on the planet, so the people of Earth will finally take him seriously. It's a unique and captivating scene, as individuals around the world struggle in confusion with everything stopped in place. There is, however, a curious cognitive dissonance regarding the trusting nature of humans. They impatiently judge the alien visitor as a dangerous monster, but barely a minute later they're perfectly comfortable letting a total stranger chaperone their young child around a busy city.
Did all those people die in wars?
Most of them. Didn't you ever hear of the Arlington Cemetery?
No, I'm afraid not.
You don't seem to know much about anything, do you, Mr. Carpenter?
Well, I'll tell you, Bobby. I've been away a long time. Very far away.
Is it different where you've been? Don't they have places like this?
Well, they have cemeteries, but not like this one. You see, they don't have any wars.
Gee, that's a good idea.
Focusing more on these intimate moments of human interaction, the film is mostly bereft of big set pieces or special effects, but some scenes inside the alien craft do show glimpses of hands-free technology and voice-activated gadgetry, both remarkably accurate predictions for a 65-year-old movie. But the assertion that Klaatu could sneak back onto this heavily guarded spaceship simply by waiting until dark and disabling only a pair of guards is patently absurd. It's in these moments that The Day the Earth Stood Still falters, like the Army's undisciplined and timid reception to the alien intruder, which feels extremely unrealistic. After sharing a long, allegorical monologue during the picture's climax, the film ends rather abruptly with an open-ended conclusion. It allows the viewer to make their own interpretation, but I for one was hoping for a bit more resolution. Although it's undeniably campy by today's standards, the themes regarding trust and anti-violence still resonate. Required viewing for all sci-fi fans, The Day the Earth Stood Still is an imaginative and influential drama with lasting imagery, and I think it's a great film. Next up tonight, a detailed re-review of Independence Day. A patriotic dose of world-saving thrills. This $75 million science fiction disaster epic, directed and co-written by Roland Emmerich, was released nationwide on July 2, 1996, which was actually a day earlier than it was scheduled to come out, thanks to the high level of anticipation among moviegoers. The highest-grossing film of the year, its $817 million take, also made it the fifth most successful movie of the entire decade. With evocative taglines like "Don't make plans for August" and "We've always believed we weren't alone. On July 4th, we wish we were," it's no surprise ID4 did well. The now infamous shot of the alien super laser destroying the White House in a massive fireball was the focal point of the film's extensive marketing campaign, which began with a dramatic spot during Super Bowl 30. The film's enormous success also influenced a slew of imitators, reinvigorated the dying disaster genre, and led to its own sequel 20 years later. When hostile extraterrestrials obliterate dozens of populated cities around the world, a disparate group of survivors converge in the Nevada desert to launch a worldwide counterattack during the titular holiday. The PG-13 rated story is absolutely overflowing with characters. There's around 200 individual speaking roles in this film, which has to be a record of some kind. The primary cast includes Will Smith, Bill Pullman, Jeff Goldblum, Mary McDonnell, Judd Hirsch, Robert Loggia, Randy Quaid, Margaret Collin, James Rebhorn, Harvey Fierstein, Adam Baldwin, Brent Spiner, James Duvall, Vivica A. Fox, Lisa Jacob, Mae Whitman, and Harry Connick Jr. Few are developed beyond their respective stereotypes, but at least they deliver their lines with sincerity. Goldblum is his typical Goldblummy self, bringing his quirky mannerisms and eccentricities to the part of an environmentalist satellite technician. Brent Spiner's manic and unkempt performance as an Area 51 scientist is great fun during his limited screen time. Loggia's gravelly voice is perfect for the authoritative general, while Rebhorn's sniveling portrayal of the Secretary of Defense works effective as his counter. Pullman, meanwhile, is excellent as the wartime president, showing resolve, patience, and uncharacteristic bravery in the face of insurmountable adversity. A bit too perfect and idealistic to be a compelling or three-dimensional character, it's his passionate and motivational speech during the film's final act that makes him the stuff of cinematic lore. A stirring and inspirational monologue you can't help but feel some patriotic pride for. Concluding his remarks by bellowing into the cold morning air, "We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today we celebrate our Independence Day." Of all the movies that have ever spoken their own title in dialogue, this might be my absolute favorite example. Especially since you've got that great shot of an amateur fighter pilot enthusiastically saluting at the end. But perhaps most notably is Will Smith in his breakout role, and the first of many box office hits for the charismatic actor. His youthful energy, tenacious attitude, and charming delivery make him an extremely effective protagonist. He also delivers the lion's share of the film's fantastically cheesy one-liners like, "I ain't heard no fat lady," and "I have got to get me one of these," and of course, "Welcome to Earth." He doesn't team up with Goldblum until the explosive finale, but their playfully contentious relationship is immediately believable and enjoyable. With frequent cutaways and inserts to over 70 mock news broadcasts created specifically for the film, we get a real sense of scale of the alien invasion. Because of this, Independence Day really feels like a worldwide crisis, even though the main characters are exclusively American. Despite its 2-hour and 25-minute runtime, ID4 is paced remarkably well, thanks largely in part to these half-dozen separate narratives that are constantly in motion.
See if you can fly that thing undercover. Hope you got an airbag.
An extraordinary, Oscar-winning achievement in visual effects, Independence Day features more miniatures and model work than any film in history, and due to the advances in digital technology since, it likely always will. The memorable destruction sequences were inventively created by turning the large-scale model cities on their sides and photographing a giant fireball in super slow motion as it rose towards the ceiling-mounted camera. Consuming every car, person, and building in its path, the result is a frighteningly realistic wave of death, even if Emmerich does take some geographic liberties with the location of the Empire State Building. For better or worse, this instantly iconic sequence sparked a persistent thread of movies obliterating famous landmarks. The aliens and their respective technology isn't particularly imaginative, however. Not only is their physical appearance stolen directly from Ridley Scott's Alien franchise, their motivations are explained only superficially. We learn very little about how they operate or why. So while this approach certainly helps reinforce the pro-human narrative, it definitely feels very one-sided and empty. The chilling orchestral score from David Arnold contains a patriotic march of steady drum beats, matched with deep, stabbing strings, while soft horns and flighty choir-like sounds echo during the softer and more dramatic moments. It's an auspicious effort from the young composer, who only had 3 films to his credit before this. But he curiously wasn't nominated for an Oscar, instead winning a Grammy for Best Instrumental Composition, joining a select few to win the latter without a nomination for the former. Admittedly, this is a very simple, emotionally shallow, anti-intellectual blockbuster that's detrimentally pro-American. But it's also endlessly quotable, totally thrilling, and damn enjoyable. Guilty pleasure or not, this is one of my all-time favorites and easily the greatest disaster movie ever made. A summer staple I watch every year on July 4th, Independence Day is supremely fun popcorn entertainment at its finest. ID4 is an amazing film. Next up tonight, its cinematic twin from that year, Mars Attacks. Surreal satire with memorable results. This science fiction comedy from acclaimed director Tim Burton was released worldwide in December of 1996, where it disappointingly only broke even with its $100 million budget. Based on the bizarre series of trading cards of the same name from the 1960s, this quirky adventure opens by literally setting fire to a fleeing cow stampede, so you know you're in for a good time. The PG-13 rated narrative follows a bevy of puny humans who attempt to defend Earth from an invading force of cruel, disgusting, and unbeatable Martians. The 106-minute script rolls along without much driving this unique plot, but the amusing parody of classic B-movie, sci-fi films, and political satire should keep kids and adults easily entertained. The size and star power of the ensemble cast is absolutely ridiculous. Jack Nicholson, Glenn Close, Annette Bening, Pierce Brosnan, Danny DeVito, Martin Short, Sarah Jessica Parker, Michael J. Fox, Tom Jones, Jim Brown, Natalie Portman, Jack Black, John Don Baker, and Frank Welker as the voice of the ugly aliens. To put that another way, it's the only film in existence to feature lead actors from the James Bond, Back to the Future, Batman, and Star Wars franchises in one picture. Thanks to a dual role, 3-time Academy Award winner Nicholson gets the slight majority of the screen time though. His portrayal of the pragmatic and optimistic American president is as hilarious as it is original, who is quick to ease fears after Congress is vaporized by remarking, "I want the people to know that they still have 2 out of 3 branches of the government working for them, and that ain't bad." The other character he plays, a greedy Texas casino owner, adds little to the story and probably should have been removed entirely. Seeing the rest of the well-respected actors mug for the camera and go toe-to-toe with the tiny Martians is great fun. But the best part of the film was undoubtedly its gleeful willingness to kill off literally every one of these big-name actors. The approach lends a certain deal of unpredictability to the otherwise goofy and tension-free plot. A pivotal scene with a little green spacemen follow up their introductory greeting of "We come in peace" by obliterating everything within ray gun range is a true joy to watch, especially considering their only opposition is the inept US military, anachronistically dressed in World War II era outfits. The wizards at Industrial Light and Magic are to thank for the photorealistic CGI work that makes all these colorful scenes work so well. Unsure what the Martian should sound like, the writers reportedly just scripted "ack, ack, ack" for all their dialogue, which, thanks to laziness or lack of creativity, became what they actually say in the film, a decision that actually works very well. Danny Elfman contributes a whimsical and spacey score that expertly captures the film's mood and campy tone. Although the pacing is a bit stop and go and nothing here is at all believable, the experience is harmless, overly violent fun for those who wish to shut their brain off and have a good time. Ending on a fabulous final shot of Tom Jones singing and dancing with forest animals, this is one movie I won't mind watching again in a few years. Mars Attacks is a uniquely ambitious and silly experience and a decidedly cool film. Next up, War of the Worlds. The familiar concept only supports the thin plot for so long. Produced on a budget of $132 million, this Steven Spielberg sci-fi disaster film was the fourth highest grossing film of 2005, with its $592 million take. Loosely based on the famous novel by H.G. Wells of the same name, the 116-minute plot follows Tom Cruise and his family, who fight for survival during a deadly alien invasion. Cruise is charismatic and watchable no matter what he does, and this role is no exception, bringing determination and hope to a completely unwinnable situation. Alongside him as his teenage children are Dakota Fanning and Justin Chatwin, who play off their A-list father with ease. The initial attack on a New York suburb mixes curiosity with tension as large tripod machines emerge from under the ground. Strikingly realistic visual effects and convincing performances from the large group of extras help sell this memorable moment. The onlookers' breathless reactions to the unthinkable draw obvious parallels to 9/11, similarities that are driven home even further when Cruise is horrified to discover he's covered in the ash of vaporized humans. The PG-13 rated narrative feels extremely claustrophobic, as the few glimpses we see of the global destruction are via in-world TV monitors broadcasting news coverage. Because of this more localized destruction, we never see famous American landmarks getting vaporized by the invading aliens. Taking their place instead are more intimate and unsettling scenarios, like when our protagonists emerge from a cellar to discover an entire neighborhood flattened by a crashed 747 airliner. A horrifying landscape so memorable, Universal Studios replicated it as part of their studio backlot tour.
I thought, what if the 747 goes down right in a big neighborhood? Because it's just something you don't see.
Later, the Cruise family minivan attracts the unwanted attention of an unruly mob, desperate for their transportation. It's an incredibly tense and realistic scene that becomes downright uncomfortable as humanity stoops to its worst.
Hold on. Wait, look out. Look out, hold on! Are you okay?
But why were they on the move in the first place? I'll never understand why characters in these types of stories are constantly trying to outrun danger, when the obvious choice is just to return to a place that's already destroyed. Towards the middle of the film, a heated conversation inside a speeding van is photographed in a stitched-together faux one-take shot, an incredible visual effects accomplishment that likely inspired a very similar scene in The Children of Men, released the following year. The rest of the cinematography is mostly filmed from eye level, reinforcing the sensation that we're experiencing these dangers from the perspective of the helpless humans. Unfortunately, the unrelenting pace comes to a grinding halt when the film takes a lengthy detour to play hide-and-seek with probing alien tentacles in Tim Robbins' dark basement. Robbins' small role includes a great description of the film's title, though, when he calmly warns, "This is not a war any more than there's a war between men and maggots. This is an extermination." There's still some effective suspense in this scene, but when the big-budget escapist adventure pivots to a quiet horror thriller, my interest dropped to zero. As a filmmaker, especially one of Spielberg's caliber, you have to ask yourself how each component services the story. Since this 20-minute portion contributes little and hampers even more, War of the Worlds would have been much better if it had been removed. Worse still, the movie never recovers. Of those familiar with the source material, its surprise ending is a great way to conclude a believable sci-fi story. But for a modern cinematic adaptation, wrapping up your entire plot with 2 lines of Morgan Freeman narration is an unsatisfying way to end a blockbuster. Spielberg's longtime collaborator John Williams thankfully lends his remarkable talents to the soundtrack, which mixes mechanical sounds, pulsing strings, and heavy drums. A fine adaptation of the classic work, most audiences will enjoy this adventure on at least one viewing. Despite its uneven momentum and detrimental adherence to the climax-free story, War of the Worlds has thrilling action with frighteningly beautiful imagery. I think it's a cool film. Lastly, my review of Independence Day: Resurgence. Unnecessary and unfulfilling. Released on June 24, 2016, 1 week shy of the original's 20th anniversary, this $165 million science fiction action film is once again directed by the master of the disaster film, Roland Emmerich. Despite its growing cume north of 270 million, IDR, or whatever we're abbreviating it to, was seen as a box office disappointment, failing to earn even the top spot on its opening weekend. Mirroring the real-life delay that occurred between installments, this PG-13 rated picture takes place 2 decades after the so-called War of 96. Mankind has united in peace and enhanced their society with advanced alien technology, but when the bad boys from outer space show up to kick their ass all over again, our familiar heroes find themselves just as helpless. The 2-hour picture begins with an excessive amount of world building, as the narrative breathlessly delivers crucial exposition as fast as possible. To its credit though, these earlier scenes are probably Resurgence's best. Revisiting this universe and seeing most of our favorite characters again is a real treat. The imaginative extrapolation of alien technology only briefly glimpsed in the first film is on proud display here. The band of intrepid and resourceful Earthlings include Liam Hemsworth as a hot-headed Earth space defense fighter pilot. Jeff Goldblum, now a famous war hero, is the director of this interplanetary ESD agency. Bill Pullman is the respected former president, while Brent Spiner receives a sizable bump in screen time when he awakens from a 20-year coma to resume his eccentric Area 51 duties.
What the? They've gotten worse. Much worse. Mr. President?
Dr. Oken, you're awake.
Very much so.
Why are they screaming?
No. They're not screaming. They're celebrating.
Cela Ward, Jesse Usher, William Fichtner, and Judd Hirsch round out the supporting cast with pivotal, if underutilized, roles. Even Robert Loggia returns for a small non-speaking cameo in what would be his final role before his death. Facing impossible odds, Goldblum admits, "I've had years to get us ready. We never had a chance." To which Pullman immediately replies, "We didn't last time either." Despite the host of returning players, there's unfortunately some recasting and clumsy exits too. Micaiah Monroe replaces Mae Whitman as Pullman's now adult fighter pilot daughter. I can overlook her unbelievable and extremely convenient career choice, but I can't ignore the blatantly sexist recasting. Whitman may have only been a kid in the first film, but she did a great job with the role and really blossomed into a talented and beautiful actress in recent years, including her work in The Perks of Being a Wallflower and her lead role in The Duff. So even though she was reportedly available and interested in returning, she was passed over for the younger, more attractive Monroe, for reasons seemingly based on superficial Hollywood standards of beauty and little else. But the most obvious problem with the film, especially in regards to its cast, is the noticeable absence of Will Smith. Conflicting reports suggest he turned down the role over scheduling issues, while the producers claim he asked for too much money. Either way, his character is written out with a quick line of dialogue explaining that he died in a test flight. Hemsworth is perfectly fun and enjoyable as the precocious lead, functioning as Smith's de facto replacement, but it just isn't the same without him here. Especially since the movie reminds us of this now dead character by constantly referencing his legacy. On the topic of clumsy exits, Vivica A. Fox returns for what's a glorified cameo before rather unceremoniously getting killed off. Her death is emblematic of my biggest issues here, as Independence Day Resurgence doesn't have any of the same weight or scale of the original. Major characters are killed and famous cities completely leveled without any fanfare or concern. And truth be told, watching explosions rip through famous landmarks just isn't as exciting or special as it used to be. Resurgence is, ironically, a victim of its own namesake, as it's never able to escape its predecessor's shadow. The comparisons between these films are not only inevitable, but largely unfavorable. A new threat retconned into this follow-up is a mile-wide hole the aliens attempted to suck Earth's core out of like a straw, which apparently went unvisited or unexamined until the day before their next attack. The coincidence and the concept of a giant tunnel through the Earth are quite unbelievable, even for this series. IDR is littered with familiar beats and imagery straight out of the first film, but they're all repurposed or rearranged in a new way. Oftentimes it feels like we're watching a remake instead of a sequel. Despite its laundry list of flaws, not the least of which being its unrequested existence in the first place, Resurgence succeeds because of its returning characters. Fans of the original definitely won't enjoy this one as much, but it's still an exciting ride with some cool moments. And here's what you had to say about it. Deriding the poor character development, you thought this was only alright. Independence Day Resurgence often misfires, but strong action sequences and nostalgia baiting help it become a good film. A big shout out to my producer level supporters on Patreon whose continued support makes videos like this possible. Joshua Moran, Eric Jones, Simon Juarez, Scott Sullivan, Kevin Martin, Kenny Van Gorder, Daniel Epps, and Ivan Adrian. Thank you guys so much for the support. And if you enjoy what I make, please support my content at patreon.com/JohnPaula. Unfortunately, that does it for tonight's episode, but next week we'll be reviewing the first 6 Star Trek films if you'd like to leave a comment review and be involved. Or you can click this information icon to watch some related videos. Once again, my name is Jonathan Paula. Thank you for watching, and have a good movie night.